And it seems like the only people following the rules are what is colloquially known as the right. But Richie, what did the New York Times say about you?
They called me a rioter.
That's right.
Ooh.
Yes,
and they knew it
did.
wasn't true, right?
That he punched the
well,
door.
there's a longer story there, which I'll explain in as I'm writing it down. But basically, what happened was that they took a photograph of me. I have a certain appearance.
They assumed.
I look a little bit like a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal, who would be like one of those Trump-supporting monkeys. And so then they saw the photo of me after being pepper sprayed, and they took that surface level assumption, but really, if they had have looked, even for 10 minutes, they would have realized that they relied on my reporting in Kenosha. So really what it was there is, he's a rioter, he's a Trump supporter. We don't even need to do our due diligence because he's, he just doesn't deserve that.
And the photograph was taken in front of that, that famous photo with the door punched that was shattered. And they said who punched the door.
Yeah.
So if they
said it was
lie, though,
can you imagine?
My mom was so pissed. She was like, give me that guy's,
I
who is the photographer?
No,
give me his email. I'm going to
I
give
wrote a
him.
letter I wrote a letter that night, and a good friend of mine talked me out of it because it wouldn't have done Richie any good.
So there's something called the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. This refers to when you encounter a news story that you know to be false, but then assume the news in other areas is telling the truth. So you know what they said about your own son.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine what every story is like. Why assume any of the other stories are true?
Well, again, I would prefer not to use these sweeping generalizations, Tim, but I'm listening.
Yeah.
I just would like to figure out a way that there can be a more productive conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know that, when I was marching in Washington, going to Arlington Cemetery we carried coffins and, it was a very dramatic effort. I'm not sure how many people we alienated and how many people we sort of corralled, but there just doesn't seem to be any meeting of the ways anymore.
Well, the right certainly is trying. Again, colloquially, whatever you want to call it, we've certainly reached out to tons of people, and you have this meme, Ben Shapiro, or saying debate me, because Ben Shapiro has consistently tried to have sit-down conversations with people on the left. They won't do it. In fact,
it's true for him as well, you're saying.
Oh, this is a known issue, right? When Ben Shapiro went on this show, he was sitting next to a trans woman, and when he gave his opinion, the trans woman grabbed him and threatened to put him in the hospital. Ben Shapiro still will invite people to come debate him, or he, to be fair, Ben told us, he's like, I don't ask for debates, I ask for conversations, and if we argue. They won't do it. When he tried showing up to DePaul in Chicago, the police told him if he took one more step, he would be arrested because it's a safety risk. These people have been burning down buildings to prevent conversations. They threatened to burn down the theater where we were hosting our event because they wanted to stop. And it worked. The theater said, sue me, I don't care. The damages I'd have to pay you are cheaper than me rebuilding my theater. So we had to move the event because there's a certain level of threat and pressure that normal people cannot tolerate. When Antifa is allowed to kill these Black Lives Matter rioters and Antifa, their rioting resulted in the death of between 26 and 32 people. And Kamala Harris donated. She solicited donations on Twitter to bail these people out of jail. Joe Biden's staff members solicited donations, or actually gave donations to bail these people out. When you have the January 17th rioters, the January 20th rioters in 2017, Trump's inauguration, they torched a limo that belonged to an immigrant. They smashed a bunch of windows. And when the police arrested them, they all got off. In fact, not only did they get off, they sued DC and won millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. So now you have somebody who owns a venue, and they get a phone call and they say, we're Antifa, and you know what'll happen. They'll say anything you say because the right isn't going to do this. The police also won't stop Antifa. But if a bunch of right-wingers go to the Capitol, they'll get a year in solitary confinement. If you get 90 to 100 plus days of left-wing extremists firebombing a federal building in the Pacific Northwest, where a handful of these people get charged for sure, but only the ones who really push the boundaries. For the most part, it's like anybody who even walked in the building, befuddled, are getting called a violent terrorist extremist and having their jobs destroyed. A woman who didn't even go in had her home raided in Alaska. It's very obvious that when, Bubba Wallace has 12 FBI agents or however many storm NASCAR over a garage pull rope, but you can't get the FBI to investigate, very serious crimes like, that we've seen with Antifa, then you have to wonder. I want to keep that one a little vague, but I've had my dealings where wondering, like, why isn't, with our security issues, where's law enforcement? Like, what was there's an active investigation, maybe something will happen, but we've had death threats. We've had people call in fake SWAT police raids to this building 8 times, and the bomb squad has shown up. It's remarkable.
Don't you think the shoe's kind of on the other foot now, though? Back in the 60s and 70s, it was all of these left-wing progressive groups that were being infiltrated by the authoritarian government.
It's not on the other foot.
My point is that now it's the, that those groups aren't the ones that are representing the same existential threat.
Those people were pro-free speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were anti-war. Mm-hmm. Which side is pro-free speech and anti-war right now?
Well, exactly.
So those who are for free speech, the rights of the people, who are for pushing back against corrupt corporate power and war, that would be described as today the right. Mm-hmm. The left is they're not protesting. I don't want to confuse that protest we saw in the chamber because that was debunked. But there are people outraged that DeSantis stripped Disney of their tax privileges. A massive multinational corporation. The left is like, we should give tax cuts. These people should be allowed. Ron DeSantis, what he's doing is wrong. It's just like, why are you cheering for the corporations? Mm-hmm. They're outraged that Elon Musk wants to buy Twitter, saying, oh no, we can't let billionaires get social media, but they've been defending these same billionaires for a decade, saying it's a private company, they can do what they want. So I think left and right are just tribal signifiers. We can call it up, down, we can call it left, right, we can call it A, B.
But it's not binary. There's so many different people with so many different thoughts. Mm-hmm. If someone thinks that they're another to you, particularly for you, if you're like, the left is horrible and that guy's a leftist, that guy's going to be like, well then dude, I don't want to be near you if you're going to call me that. I'm not.
Ian, I think you have an issue with trying to dissect for the sake of argument instead of actually engaging with the argument.
Well, I think this is a part of the reason why you're having trouble inviting certain people on. If you predispose them as being part of this evil idea or group, then it's going to be a lot harder to get them to be like, okay, he's cool.
Well, you are very passionate about it, Tim. It's true.
So when they post over, like the Young Turks, right? They just make things up, right? And I think they literally do. And then I don't engage with them. And how often do I call out people's names and say them?
Infrequently, maybe a couple times a week.
Or I usually say, I don't want to say their name. Yeah. I don't want to.
Minimize harm.
When I privately reach out to them, they just say, screw off. Look, man, I think there's a reality that you don't want to acknowledge because for whatever reason, I don't know. Because you say this all the time, like, oh, we can't say left or right.
Yeah,
it's like,
look, because Mao did it. You really want to be like Mao? You're in the position of Mao right now. You have that power.
That's a ridiculous reductionist.
You have a cultural revolution of people that are listening to you right now.
And Ian, right? See, what you're doing right now is you're creating a false argument.
No, I'm very serious. This internet technology is insanely powerful.
So if you do that thing, it's the same thing.
No, you have that cultural power that he had. You have more power than he had.
I did not create the idea of leftists existing.
No. That was a French Revolution thing. But it's up to you, man. Your words are like convincing people.
Your issue is, once again, semantics.
Definitely.
That's it.
Or literology, whatever you want to call it.
We should move on. I don't want to waste time arguing the definitions of words that don't actually add to the conversation.
I'm saying if you divide people, then we're going to be living in a divided society. But if you unite people, then we will be united.
How do you unite people?
By dispensing with these false paradigms, these false dichotomies. Left and right, A and B, up and down. People aren't black and white.
We're in a paradigm shift, right? So like some of our definitions of things like left and right, Republican and Democrat are changing. And so I think a byproduct of that is always going to be some degree of uncomfortability where people are like, oh, I'm outside of my comfort zone. This isn't exactly the way that I grew up, that I knew everything to be. So like on the one hand, you're saying, oh, we can't be using these terms because it kind of casts people in these whatever antiquated boxes. But also, if you don't use words, then how can you communicate, any kind of ideas like about these political ideas. Like, you have to put them somewhere. So, like, what would be your solution there?
I think a lot of it is communicating with emotions instead of logic.
How does that happen?
Keep talking.
Like you got to kind of understand people and listen to them as they are without labeling them. It's tempting to want to put people in boxes so that you can understand them maybe better, but it's just about calming people down, really.
Here, I made a picture.
Nice.
There you go.
That's beautiful.
Magnetic field.
It's a butt crack. No, it's it's the left and the right.
Well, turn it sideways. Now what is it?
Is
The
there
up
no?
and the down.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Now rip it in half. What is it then?
It doesn't matter what you want to call it. The point is, what I'm showing you here is there's many different lines and there's many different points. And they're all very far away from each other. But some of them, there's still a very clear split between the two groups. But you'll notice in the middle, they overlap a little bit. The point is, using terms like left and right, as I often say, are not absolute, which you seem to think they are. It's a description of the spheres of influence that exist and have a slight merger at the point where there's some, maybe, what do they call it? The stressed sideliners is what Pew research called them. For the most part, however, everyone seems to fall on one side either by 0.1 degrees or by 100 degrees. The fact remains, left and right are simply things we use to describe the umbrellas that surround the two different parent factions.
I thought Thomas Massey came on the show a few months ago, and he said something pretty profound, where he said in the back of like the chamber where the Congress hangs out, there's two dressing rooms specifically. Like, they built it to have two political parties. They do not want more than that. They want to maintain this uniparty of duality by keeping people like wild animals. It's like sports. They want it to be like two teams trying to win.
Well, it's an easy way to have a huge democracy where people have the air of things going back and forth when in reality they're not.
So here's what happens.
It's like people think that they represent, this side's fighting for me, but then in reality it's just two sides that are basically going in the same direction.
So right now, leftists are posting fake tweets and fake quotes from me that say things like, Tim Pool has called for the death of this person, or that dude the other day on Tim's show, he was saying that people need to go out and get violent against this group of people, and they believe it. Of course, that never happened, right? So what happens is the people in that sphere of influence now typically believe these things. And it's really remarkable when, for some reason, conservatives think I'm an atheist, which I've never said, and people on the left claim that I'm a far-right religious conservative, which I've also never claimed. But a fair point if from your perspective, you want to think I'm more religious because I do believe in God. But when they say things like, Tim believes this thing about taxes. And I'm like, every time I've talked about taxes, I've talked about like the need for higher tax brackets and a stronger progressive tax on the wealthy. Even Steve Bannon has said tax the rich. But they'll lie and make fake quotes. And then in that sphere of influence, which is absolutely split between two parent umbrellas, they all believe that. So when I get into a conversation with someone on the left, which I recently did, he said something like, you're pro-doxing, Tim. You would absolutely dox Antifa at a moment's notice. I know what you right-wingers do.
What does that mean, doxy?
Dox means to publish the private details of an individual, like their phone number, their home, their name. And I said, no, I actually have a huge policy against that, and I often avoid saying names on my show to prevent what's called a brigade when everyone targets an individual. And he was like, no, I heard you say, he's like, I remember during Occupy Wall Street, you were trying to film people's faces and publish their names. And I said, that never happened. He goes, yes, it did. Everybody knows it because they lied and made these things up. What really happened is during Occupy Wall Street, I was walking down the street and I saw 3 people wearing masks deflating police tires. And I was filming. So they attacked me. And I said, transparency is what matters. If something is happening in public, I'm going to film it. If you don't want your identity revealed, wear a mask. So what they did was, okay, that's a tenet most people would actually agree with. If you are in the public and you are causing damage, we have a right to know what you're doing for whatever cause. You can wear a mask if you want to protect your identity. But if you're in public during a protest doing these things, people will see you do it. What grounds do you have to violently assault on someone who happens to have a camera? Knowing that they have no winning argument, they changed it and just lied and said Tim Pool was trying to take their masks off and publish their names.
Interesting discussion.
And they also, the official Occupy Wall Street account tweeted Tim Pool just tried to arrest someone, which was an outright lie. And it was so egregious that one of the other activist groups messaged them and said, take that down now. Like, you went too far. And they had to remove it.
That's what happens when you have control of the discourse.
Right.
Is you can propagate whatever you want, and it won't, like you were saying with Barack Obama blowing up an American citizen and not being properly reported on, why my mom didn't know about it. It's like I was working at NBC during the end of Obama's second term, and it was like the degree to which, these people had gotten their jobs in the White House press corps specifically because they asked all the right questions. You ask a question about that drone blowing up that American citizen in that White House briefing, you can say goodbye to asking any more questions to the press secretary. So it's like after 40 years of us going kind of in the same direction, left or right, it didn't matter because you had this institution of the media that wasn't going to question it.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.